call the February 10th meeting together of the Administrative Regulation Review Subcommittee. We got a small agenda today, but a few changes as well. But Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Wilson. Here. Senator Yates. Representative Bridges. Here. Representative Fraser Gordon.
Here.
Representative Marzian. Co-Chair West.
Here.
And Chair Lewis.
Here. With a quorum being present, the subcommittee is duly constituted to do business. The first matter of business is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? That'll work. Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Again, we are moving out of order today. We're going to start with Department of Financial Institutions. We do try to accommodate our guests, and if you'll come to the table, please call the first regulation.
Department of Financial Institutions, 808 KAR 009010. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
This regulation is being amended to establish the requirement that a licensee shall report how a customer entered into a deferred deposit transaction, increase the database verification fee, and make technical changes. The amended after comments version clarifies that the database verification fee may be paid by the licensee or charged to the customer. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Hi, my name is Marnie Gibson. I'm the commissioner of the department, and I do want to thank you for accommodating our necessary change. So again, thank you so much for that.
Very welcome.
Hi, I'm Catherine Adams-Cornett. I'm General Counsel.
Hannah Carlin, Division Director.
Thank you all for coming. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Without objection, so ordered. Does any member of the subcommittee have questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please let me know where we are on the credit union reg as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Please call the next regulation.
Secretary of State, 030 KAR 002011. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
30 KR 211 repeals 30 KR 2010, certification of vacancy and nominations because it has been superseded by statute. The staff suggested amendment amends the necessity, function, and conformity paragraph to comply with KRS Chapter.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, Jennifer Sketchfield, Deputy Secretary of State.
Thank you very much for coming. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any members with questions? Seeing none, thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Office of the Attorney General, 040 KAR 005010. This regulation also has a staff suggested amendment.
40 005010 amends provisions for hearing officer training to revise definitions, streamline and organize requirements for initial training and continuing education, provide for updated streaming technology, and add mediation to approved training examples. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record? Is that mic on? Is it green light?
It is now.
Thank
there
you.
We go.
Appreciate it. Chris Boland, Executive Director, Office of Administrative Hearings.
Steve Humphreys, Executive Director of the Kentucky Office of Regulatory Relief.
Thank you all for coming. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of staff amendments? Without objection, so ordered. Do any members have any questions? Thank you for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Board of Speech Language Pathology and Audiology, 201 KAR 017120, emergency. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
201 KR 17120E establishes and incorporates by reference the rules adopted by the Audiology and Speech Language Pathology Interstate Compact, including the Rule on Definitions, Rule on Data System Reporting Requirements, and Rule on Implementation of Criminal Background Check Requirement. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A. Additionally, the agency submitted a corrected physical impact statement to add its response to question 4.
Thank you for coming today. We do have a guest on Zoom as well, but will you both introduce yourself for the record?
Jennifer Lutz, Chair of the Board, Speech Pathology and Audiology.
Sarah Boswell-James. I am Board Counsel for the Board of Speech Language Pathology and Audiology.
Thank you. Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Bear with us 1 second. Having some technical difficulties. Thank you. Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Bear with us 1 second. Having some technical difficulties. Thank you. Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, she can hear us, and I can barely hear her.
Bear with us 1 second. Having some technical difficulties. Thank you.
Computer. I think my
Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yeah, she can hear us, and I can barely hear her.
Bear with us 1 second. Having some technical difficulties. Thank you.
computer. I think my
Can you hear us, Sarah?
Yeah, she can hear us, and I can barely hear her.
Bear with us.
It's a remix.
Well, tell you what, we're going to go forward real quick. We may have some technical questions. If so, do we have a chat feature?
Yes, we do.
There we go. So we can get through this. We'll make it through. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Here we go without objection, so ordered. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thank you for coming. Thanks, Sarah.
No, thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Tourism, Arts, and Heritage Cabinet, Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, 301 KAR 002041. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
This regulation is being amended to establish requirements for species and the number of animals that may be maintained within foxhound training enclosure, possession and transport of red fox and coyotes, fencing to maintain red fox and coyotes within foxhound training enclosures, size of enclosures, quarantine and disease response, record keeping and reporting, and permitting and enforcement. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A and make technical changes.
Thank you both for coming today. Can you please identify yourselves for the record?
Jenny Gilbert, Legislative Liaison.
Stephen Fields, Staff Attorney.
There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? I'll bite. Every month I feel like it's trot lines or something. So I guess possession and transport of red fox and coyotes. What changes are being made in regards to that?
This regulation and the amendment came to our commission through the Houndsman Association, actually. It was a group of sportsmen who get together, and they were wanting more provisions that allowed for training with dogs, but not for commercial purposes, just for them to get together and do that non-commercially. So we had to add to this language we already had commercial language, we added non-commercial language, and we just added provisions for how those enclosures needed to be made that protected both the wildlife inside those facilities, but also the wildlife outside.
Okay, thank you. Any other member have any questions or concerns? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Energy and Environment Cabinet, Department for Environmental Protection, 401 KAR 047110 and 401 KAR 048320. Both of these regulations have staff suggested amendments.
401-047-110 amends permit by rule requirements for permit holders that manage, dispose of, and process waste to change the registration review period from 5 business days to 30 calendar days, delete the exception for medical waste transfer stations, include up to 2-acre construction or demolition debris landfills or solid waste incinerators for compliance with reporting requirements, and revise incorporated material. The amended after comments version amends sections 1 and 2 to correct citations. 401-048-320 amends operating requirements for specific construction or demolition debris landfills to expand requirements that were for less than 1 acre to include up to 2 acres, include a maximum volume capacity of waste for a site expanded to include up to 2 acres, and clarify closure provisions for final receipt of waste. The staff suggested amendments amend various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you all for coming. Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Yes. Hello, my name is Brian Osterman. I'm the director for the Division of Waste Management.
Tyler Shields, Regulatory Supervisor, Division of Waste Management.
Thank you all for coming today. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? The objections so ordered. And this was based on a piece of legislation that we had passed, correct?
Yes, that was House Bill 478.
Okay. Was that Representative Branscombe? Or I can't remember who had that bill. That sounds right. All right.
A quick question.
Co-Chair West has a question.
Yeah, on the 2-acre landfill, are these private run landfills, or do municipalities run?
So yeah,
it's a mix, I guess.
Yeah, there's a mix. There's a mix of both
Yeah.
municipalities and private run landfills.
Gotcha. And is it a lot of times is it related to like a single project, like you're building this large project and you need a place, or is it more organized than that? I guess
Some of them are for single projects, but a lot of them are just private demolition contractors that have their own landfill.
Gotcha.
And so that's.
I'm with you now. Thank you.
Does any other member have a question or comment? Thank you all for coming. Please call the next regulation.
Justice and Public Safety Cabinet, Department of State Police, 502 KAR 010120 and 502 KAR 012010. Both of these regulations have staff-suggested amendments.
502 KR 10120 amends provisions to increase the application fee for obtaining or renewing a hazardous materials endorsement or a commercial driver's license as a result of the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, increasing the security threat assessment fee. The staff-suggested amendment amends Sections 2 and 3 to delete references to incorporated material that is no longer used, delete language allowing an extension of the expiration date of the hazardous materials endorsement to conform to current cabinet processes, and further comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 502 KR 12010 amends material incorporated by reference to update protocols requiring physicians, advanced practice registered nurses, and physician's assistants to provide medical clearance, medical authorization for further evaluation when a child presents with a concern for sexual assault or abuse, as recommended by the Sexual Assault Response Advisory Committee. The staff-suggested amendment amends the Relates To paragraph and Section 1 to correct statutory references and make technical corrections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Thank you for coming today. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Nathan Goins, Assistant General Counsel with the Justice and Public Safety Cabinet.
Thank you for coming. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Is there a second? Without objections, so ordered. My co-chair, Steve West, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't your first rodeo, right? Anything that includes new or increased fees, we ask a question usually. Approximately how much would the new fee be for the CDL TSA?
It's about $23 and change, and it was a result of a change at the federal level requiring that fee to be increased.
Thank you.
Do any other members have questions or comments? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Education and Labor Cabinet, Board of Education, Department of Education, 704 KAR 003 535. This regulation has an agency amendment.
This regulation is being amended to ensure students in these programs and through this specific funding mechanism are appropriately included in the accountability system, provide clarification around teachers and administrators of full-time enrolled online, virtual, and remote learning programs, provide a point of emphasis regarding the adoption and annual review of policies and procedures regarding periodic monitoring by the district, and make technical corrections. The agency amendment amends Section 2 to cap enrollment at 10% above the previous year's enrollment.
Thank you all for coming today. Please, if you don't care to introduce yourselves to the record.
Dr. Robbie Fletcher. Oh, thank you. Dr. Robbie Fletcher, Commissioner of Education.
Good afternoon. Todd Allen, General Counsel and Deputy Commissioner.
Matt Ross, Associate Commissioner in the Office of Finance and Operations.
Thank you all for coming. I guess for starters, I mean, we've heard a lot from many parties on this issue, but I guess if you want to give us a rundown of what the agency amendment is and what it does and who it might affect.
We do have an agency amendment there that includes a cap of 10% of what the in-person public would be. Some of the data that we have shows that we have the capacity for a district to handle large numbers of virtual and online may be an issue, or definitely is an issue, as a matter of fact. For example, if you look at a district that has, under 704 KR 3535, it requires that the District Board of Education adopt policies and procedures for the operation of full-time enrollment, virtual and remote learning programs, which must include the procedures for transitioning students out of the program if they're not being successful. So most of our districts have, I think our largest district outside of one, has somewhere between 6 to 7%, and that would be Babel in Barron County, that has 6 to 7% of their in-person learning done virtually. We do have some issues as far as cap size with another group. There's also some issues as far as the percentage of students that are participating in KSA. Then also other issues I can go for if you'd like to hear them.
I think it'd be beneficial too. I mean, we've had discussions, and several of our members have met with associated groups. I guess the biggest one being Cloverport schools. How would it affect school district like Cloverport?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How would this type of the agency amendment affect and regulation would affect school districts such as Cloverport?
Well, I'll let Todd Allen to talk about some of the correspondence we had before in just a second. But one of the issues that we talked with Cloverport in November 21st, 2023, we talked to them about their student population when it comes to their student-to-teacher ratio as what's required in statute. That was in November 21st, 2023 from Commissioner Kenny. And then fast forward to October 2024, we still had 27 of 29 elementary courses that exceeded the class requirements. At the middle school level, we had 82 of 118 that exceeded, but they also had 110 of 153 that exceeded the class size. Now, I will say the district has made some progress to go from that to still having 32 courses that are overpopulation. But also, too, some of the data that we also have, a part of this is there is a 95% requirement and a federal minimum requirement to be a part of our state for students to participate in the state assessment. This particular, when we talk about Cloverport, their math in the elementary participation rate was 89.4. Their reading was 89.4%. Science was 93.9. Social studies 84.9. Writing 83.7. Editing and mechanics was 86%. I can go all the way through to high school and math. Again, the 95% is the federal minimum, and we have math at 85.4%, reading 85.4%, science 81.1%. That also includes social studies, writing, editing, mechanics. But in middle school, we have editing and mechanics at 79.3% participation rate, writing at 78%, 78.7%, in social studies, science 90%, reading 86.8%, and 86.3%. So if you make a change in this, again, the growth that has happened with this district, it makes it very difficult for them to be able to meet the needs of those students. And I'll ask Todd Allen if he wants to add.
Sure. Just to answer your question, Co-Chair, Cloverport, if they wish to exceed 10% of their in-person enrollment in their virtual program under the agency amendment, then they would need to come before the State Board of Education and request a waiver from this provision of the regulation under KRS 156-160.
And what would that process look like? I mean, would you say let's increase it to 15% if you hit these metrics, or would there be a cap on the percentage? What type of metrics would you look at? A variety of things. But.
Yeah, that would be within the discretion of the state board for the district to come before the state board, propose the number that it's looking at and how it's going to deliver a quality program for the students that it proposes to enroll in the program in excess of 10% of its in-person population.
Sure. And I guess that's, I see where you're wanting to go with this, but that's where I struggle is in terms of doing this in regulation. Obviously, I love regulations. But I almost feel like we need to have something clearly defined in statute that shows the metrics and what the process looks like. And I'm fully aware of you. I mean, you all are out there in the weeds on this too, and trying to do what's best for Kentucky students. And so I fully appreciate and understand what you're doing. Do any of the other members of the subcommittee have questions or comments? Co-Chair West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any questions. More of a comment. As Chair of Education, we've been back and forth on this issue, and we've been literally in the weeds on this type of thing. But my comment is basically thanking the commissioner for your openness and back and forth discussion on this issue. It's really a breath of fresh air as compared to your predecessor, as having an open door and open to discussion. So I just want to make that comment, put that on the record. Thank you. No matter what happens here today, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, so we've Co-Chair West and I, we've talked. We want this to go forward. However, we're not going to make a motion to adopt the agency amendment at this time, so discussions can take place. What that would look like is it will go to the Committee of Jurisdiction, so it would be Senate Education, House Education as well, at which time an agency amendment could be adopted. But it's also my hope that maybe, I know co-chairs already filed legislation to attempt to address this, and in conversations with other members in the House, it's definitely a topic of concern. But if there's not a motion, that's all we have, and it'll go on to the Committee of Jurisdiction. And Commissioner, I'd be happy to answer any questions about what that process looks like as well.
Okay, we'll talk as we go forward.
Thank you all for coming today. Please call the next regulation.
Department of Workplace Standards 803 KAR 002 320 Emergency.
803-002-320 Emergency amends occupational safety and health standards in the context of toxic and hazardous substances to revise classification provisions for certain health and physical hazards, update labeling requirements, and establish new provisions for trade secrets, safety data sheets, and definitions.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Good afternoon, Robin Maple.
Get your mic. There you go.
Good afternoon, Robin Maple.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Robin Maple, OSH Standards Specialist with the Department of Workplace Standards.
Good afternoon, Jason Hernandez, General Counsel for the Department of Workplace Standards Legal Division.
Good afternoon, Chuck Stribling, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Workplace Standards.
Thank you all for coming today. There are no amendments. Are there any members with any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Public Protection Cabinet, Department of Insurance 806 KAR 009 360. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
806 KR 9360 amends to establish the $10,000 registration fee for a person seeking a pharmacy benefit manager license, state the $1,000 annual licensing fee, list mandatory requirements for a license application of a person seeking a pharmacy benefit manager license, and update the license application form. The staff suggested amendment amends various sections in the license application to comply with KRS Chapter 13A, and amends Section 2 for consistency with statutory law, changing references from May 31st to May 30th. Additionally, the agency submitted a corrected physical impact statement to add its response to question 3A.
Thank you all for coming today. Can you please identify yourselves for the record?
Beth Taylor, Staff Attorney for the Department of Insurance.
I'm Sean Orm, Executive Advisor for the Department, and I'd like to start by saying we'd like to move to defer this regulation.
Sure, absolutely. Before we get into that, I know I had a few questions as well as my co-chair. Co-chair, if you'd like to start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I didn't know you had questions, but mine's in anticipation of future requests. So off the top of your head, I don't have to know an exact number. Approximately how many PBMs do we have currently?
Approximately 57, I believe, last count.
Okay, I did not realize
56
there
to
was that
57.
many. Okay, and so I'm assuming these PBMs can go from small to large. How many would you put in like the large category? Just pick a number and roughly.
Well, the largest ones always obviously come to mind. There's three big ones that are big players, but I don't know if I could classify any of the others.
You
as-
answered my question. That's all I was needing to know.
Yes.
You got three main.
That's correct.
Those are your large PBMs, and then the rest are a level below as far in scope and size.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I own pharmacies, and so I've been watching the implementation of this and tracking it very closely. Of course, you're seeing a lot of pharmacies close right now. You're seeing pharmacy deserts because of PBMs. But outside of that, Senate Bill 188, how's the implementation of that going?
It's going fairly well. We've had an increase in complaints just related to Senate Bill 188. It went into effect January 1 of this year. We've already processed over 3,000 or received 3,000 complaints just based on Senate Bill 188.
Right.
So we're working through that process right now.
So are you saying, are you still seeing maybe partial compliance for maybe the 1064 dispensing fees there, but maybe you're still seeing steering being done with patients, or?
It runs the gamut.
Yeah.
I don't think we could classify it one way or the other. It runs the gamut.
Okay. And so in the implementation of that, I know the DOI has requested that each individual pharmacy report and make these, make you aware of these complaints. So I guess if you knew what the bin on one of these insurance, one of these plans are, why would you not just fix it across the board? So like I've got a store in Hazard, I've got a store in Hyden. Why would both stores have to make a complaint to fix if it's one plan that's having this issue?
Okay, that's the Consumer Protection Division, and I think we're trying to work through the process of how to process all those claims because, again, over 3,000. So we're trying to streamline the process ourselves.
Oh yeah,
just so we can keep our everything else going as well.
I'm sure there's plenty out there. My other question would be, in regards to ERISA plans and specifically the Rutledge decision. I assume DOI is following that as well as far as the implementation and enforcing on ERISA plans as well.
We're working through that, and we're in the process of scheduling meetings with stakeholders to work through that process. So we're working through that, Mr. Chair.
And do you anticipate bringing this up at the next month's meeting as well, or what's the reason for the deferral today?
Well, we've received some comments that we'd like to take into consideration. They were outside the comment period, but we're talking about raising fees, and we want to be as transparent and as open as possible. And we want to make sure we go through this process so that everyone's heard on it.
Sure. Well, I appreciate all you do. I know that's a big task, a monumental task, but it's good work. There is a request for deferral by the agency. Is there a motion?
Motion.
I'll be okay, we got a second. Without objection, so ordered. Regulation is deferred. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Public Health, 902 KAR 004105.
This regulation establishes the procedures to implement the Kentucky Lifeline for Moms program. The amended after comments version adds clinical language for clarity.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Julie Brooks, Regulations Coordinator, Department for Public Health.
Good to see you, Julie. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of staff? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Staying with Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Medicaid Services, 907 KAR 010015. This regulation has a staff suggested amendment.
907 KR 10015 amends to establish direct and indirect graduate medical education reimbursement requirements, including a process requiring federal approval to allow for hospitals to receive reimbursement for direct costs of graduate medical education expenses incurred by in-state hospitals with graduate medical education programs, a separate process with a method for in-state hospitals to receive a supplemental outpatient payment for indirect medical education costs, and a requirement for both processes to utilize a cost report that is for the period of 1 year prior to the state fiscal year for which a payment is provided. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A and includes the latest version of Supplemental Worksheet E3, Part 7.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Good afternoon, Jonathan Scott, DMS Regulation Coordinator.
You're here every month, but just at this point, we just go with it. Good to see you, Jonathan. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval? Is there a second? Without objection, so ordered. Any questions from members of the subcommittee? Thanks for coming, Jonathan. Thanks. Please call the next regulation.
Department for Community-Based Services, 921 KAR 001 400.
This regulation is being amended to update statutory citations and material incorporated by reference to conform with House Bill 244 of the 2024 regular session.
Would you please identify yourselves for the record?
Kelly Blair, Department for Income Support.
Gail Hooper, Department of Income.
Is that mic on yours? Maybe pull it closer. Green light.
Gail Hooper with Department of Income Support.
Try it again.
Gail Hooper with Department of Income Support.
Thank you all for coming today. There are no amendments. Are there any questions from members of the subcommittee? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much.
That is the end of the agenda. Anna, how are we doing on time?
We're at 30 minutes and 52 seconds.
There we go. There we go. Let's see. The next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 10th at 1 p.m. Does anybody have a conflict? No conflict.